A lot of times when I'm talking with education leaders that are superintendents or in chief innovation officer positions or in charge of technology or academics, there seems to be a rush right now to things like one-to-one initiatives. And what's interesting about that is they are doing it knowing that students are wanting to access and needing to access technology, but oftentimes they can't articulate the instructional plan that goes along with that technology. And so the good part is we're going to have lots of technology access for these students. I think what we're finding is we're not caught up quite yet on how to fully imbibe it into the instructional priorities or into what is ultimately going to be practiced on a regular basis. And so it's sort of like building the tracks before the train's really all the way there to go over the mountain. The infrastructures are getting more robust, and they're very cognizant of that. They're very cognizant of the need to look at digital curriculum and digital instruction and digital collaboration. If you think about what we're doing right now, this is a skill set. To be able to hop on with somebody on the other coast and collaborate, this is a soft skill that students are going to learn and necessarily need to practice. It's one of the 7 survival skills Tony Wagner talks about in the Global Achievement Gap, which is the ability to collaborate and influence, but across networks. And so those are not necessarily fully formulated and being practiced. So you find that they're very well aware that technology is here, that the students want to use it. They're not fully prepared because, again, we come as digital immigrants instead of digital natives to even think about how are we going to help them develop the skill sets and how are we going to build that and wrap that into the curriculum in such a way that it's beneficial to them for their future and the expectations there.
Fantastic. Well, that also leads me to, Leilani talks at the digital curriculum sustainability discussion events with these leaders that they need to start, and part of being in the mindset of causatively, yes, you're going the one-to-one initiative, but like you say, building a bit of ahead of yourself is understanding software and what's inside the software and what are all the digital curriculum pieces that you're going to be putting onto the devices, putting onto the train tracks. And so she's trying to educate them on the software and making sure that they know they need to know what's happening inside it. Because just like people are going to one-to-one devices and paying big amounts of money, they also might put a bunch of money behind digital curriculum, but they don't really know what's in it or how it's going to work. And so you go with one huge publisher because they're the publisher that's just always been there. And it really isn't going to be the solution to really providing good education for every type of student.
I very much am aligned with Leilani on the idea that understanding what's in the curriculum, especially the digital curriculum, is extremely important, and it is probably missed. I think when you think about the big context here, competition in education is driving change, and things that were good practice 30 years ago for students and their learning experiences, for instructional staff, even for the use of technology then. These were not heavily driven or heavily practiced until competition began to put a significant amount of pressure on learning communities to retain students and to engage students. And so what I find is that technology and how it's being used then becomes an expression of the larger competitive question, which is, are you going to engage my digital native or are they going to engage my digital native? But what you also find is competition tends to break up all kinds of monopolies, not just the monopoly, say, of public education, but the monopoly of curriculum companies that have long since been the 800-pound gorillas. Because now, how easy is it for me to develop a very compelling lesson using this Google world that we live in if I have the appropriate learning framework to do it and the resources available for me? And so instructors are getting the opportunity now to bring the science of teaching, the frameworks of good practice together with the art of teaching and even some of their own passions, which re-engage them as instructors. Students are now able to pursue topics completely differently than they were before, because they get to decide what was important, not somebody who wrote the curriculum about a particular historical event or a particular fact. And so that is what, when Gutenberg printed the Bible, it changed things for the world, never to be returning to the dark ages. When Google came to bear, and the Google-like zero cost of information that we have now, that changes the world, and it can't go back. We can't put it back in the box. And even how we do curriculum, even the way that curriculum is established and what is important and what is even the important things on the test, those are going to be challenged in these next several years, because there's no one who gets to control that the same way anymore.
Do you see public schools and leadership, marketing and branding sort of just approaching that concept?
I think that school leaders sometimes totally miss the fact that building social capital in their community to really be willing to get behind their initiatives, their change initiatives, their bond initiatives, their change management, all of the things they're trying to accomplish. Social capital is extremely important, and that is marketing, in a sense, telling people what it is you're doing well. And so we run across a lot of district leaders that say things like, yeah, we're not really good at marketing, or we're not really good at telling people what it is we do, but then they dismiss it as if that's not a huge problem. And because it's competitive now, that would be like a company saying, yeah, we're really good at what we do, but nobody knows about us, and nobody knows the good things that we do, but we think we're going to somehow be able to survive in a competitive world. And it's just not the reality of competition. And so I think marketing, not for the sake of gimmick marketing, but really showing the successes, really showing the strength of your staff, really showing the strength of your students, and the efficacy of the program, that is going to be so important in building social capital. One of the stories we cover in the book is about Columbus, Indiana, and the strength of that community and the social capital in that community that started 60 years ago as a result of a failed school project. And the folks that ran the Cummins engine plant decided, we're not going to be able to recruit world-class engineers and retain them in our community if this is what our school system is like. And so through a very intentional 50-year community development plan, the Cummins engine plant and the rest of the community put together their heads and their resources, and now they have a great learning community there. They have the highest per capita rate of engineers in the United States, and they're the 6th most architecturally decorated community in the United States. And this is Columbus, Indiana, which is down in the cornfields south of Indianapolis. So it's an interesting story about the power of social capital, and it comes from marketing yourself well and connecting into your community well.
What are you excited about the future of education?
The thing that excites me the most about the future of education right now is that it's moving from a hard skills-based kind of education to a soft skills-based education that understands the requisite of having technical skills, but that also embraces the idea that technical skills are not necessarily going to be the most important things in the future to be successful in business and to be successful in our civic responsibilities and to be successful, if you will, in life. And so what has historically been a machine that produces technical skills where I can read and I can write and I can do science and I can do things, I can code. That's a technical skill. One of the stories in the book talks about a community that was coming to their schools and saying, I'm going 5 time zones out to find coders to work in our biotech industry here. And it isn't because we can't find people who can code, but we can't find people who can work collaboratively on teams and code. And so what's interesting is that is a statement about soft skills, and that is a statement about what has to be sort of a byproduct of the education of a child is for their ability to we hear about creative thinking, we hear about collaborative thinking, thinking divergently, We hear about these soft skills as being, those are things that companies need in the future, but there continues to be a disconnect in a lot of lesson frameworks that don't very intentionally establish that as a outcome. And so testing, high stakes testing, and the focus that we have on can they read, can they write, can they code, can they work on a team? Are they capable of thinking divergently about a problem? And how are they going to create in the future? These are much more relevant skills. It's interesting that Gallup has a poll that came out in 2015, and it was for parents, and it said, what do you think makes your child's school most effective? How are you measuring effectiveness in your child's school? Number one answer, almost 80% of parents responding is that my child is engaged in their classwork. And right under that, at like 78%, is that my child is hopeful about their future. Things that got much lower marks were graduating from high school, going to work immediately after high school, and going to college after high school. And the lowest marks came on getting good grades on standardized tests. But if you think about the system, it's completely built around the opposite. It's let's get good grades on standardized tests so we can either have a college or a career-ready student coming out of high school, and if they happen to be hopeful about their future, or they happen to be engaged, when it's all said and done, I guess that's a bonus.
Interview with Bill who? MeTEOR. How this interview with Bill from MeTEOR today? Yeah. Oh man, I think I'm late.
Has anybody got a selfie stick here? You got a selfie stick? No, nothing? Do you have a selfie stick? No? Do you have a selfie stick? You know, the kind you, not with you? It's one of my millennials. She's got one, but not with her. So I don't own one. Do you own one? Does anybody got one? iPhone? Tripod? I got one more stop I can make here. You're funny.
I love you.
He's got nothing to tripod this thing.
I thought you would have a selfie stick with your pocket.
That's funny. Yeah, no, that's nothing. Broom and duct tape. I got a lot of good guys around here giving me ideas with broom and duct tape. Okay, let's see. Is that close? Am I getting closer?
That's very close right there. If you can make it stay still, then we're good. There we are.
Wow.
This is MeTEOR Education and Learning Counsel combined mental powers to make an interview come off in the 21st century.
That's amazing stuff right there.